This is it, the one so many of you have been asking for. Can you beat Fallout 4 without taking any damage? As is tradition by this point, I'm not going to manually reload a save if I take damage. I set my max health to 1 so that any damage at all will kill me. As you'll see soon enough, this turned out to be more complicated than I thought. Because I'm as tough as a wet noodle, strength and endurance aren't important, so I distributed the special points into agility, intelligence, and charisma. A bomb fell, Nate got offed, my child was stolen, and I cosplayed as a fudgesicle. Before I can get the 10mm pistol to take them out at range, I must deal with a few rad roaches. For some reason, this was harder than it should have been. It was also annoying, as my health had not yet been set to 1, because I didn't have a Pip-Boy to see what my health actually was. So I reloaded a save if I took any damage. Then I got the Pip-Boy, escaped the vault, and headed to Sanctuary Hills to reunite with Codsworth, get another special point, and crack open a safe. I looted a shotgun off a corpse, met Dogmeat, and entered Concord. Preston Garvey had unfortunately killed most of the raiders outside the Museum of Freedom, robbing me of sweet experience points. But I completed the out-of-time quest, leveled up, and noticed something shitty, but not entirely unexpected. When you level up in Fallout 4, your health increases, so every time I level up, I must enter a command to take my health back down to 1. I entered the museum and made quick work of the raiders inside. I used the power armor to rip the minigun off its bipod, exited the power armor, switched to a pipe rifle, began clearing the town, and, after taking out almost all of them, I parkoured my way off the roof and down to the ground. And then a new problem. I took damage. Strange, that shouldn't have happened. I reloaded a save and discovered the problem. Armor. Armor affects how much damage you can take, something I neglected to think about. The run is still salvageable. The few times I took damage, I reloaded a prior save. This just means that I can't use any armor whatsoever. Not ideal, but whatever. The next task was to deal with the Deathclaw. The first time he hit me with a rock. I wasn't gonna let that happen again, so I used Psycho, Jet, and a minigun to finish him off. I know, Psycho increases damage resistance, but if I took any damage, I would have reloaded a save, so it's a non-issue. On my way to Diamond City, I stopped and bought a suit from Trash Can Carla. It doesn't have any damage resistance, but it boosts charisma by 2, which is useful in getting more caps out of NPCs. And that's exactly what I did. I also killed a drug dealer, because drugs are bad, okay? And then I got distracted by some feral ghouls and helped out Paladin Danse. I say helped out, but really I just threw Molotovs off the top of a bus. Clearing out the ArcJet systems with Danse wasn't as hard as you'd expect. Stay hidden behind a wall and only take pot shots at the synths while Danse does the heavy lifting and you'll be fine. Once I made sure he hadn't been cooked to death, we got the thingy he was after, I got a laser rifle from him, and I was back on the road to Diamond City. Once I was inside, I returned to Sanctuary to drop off a bunch of crap that I didn't need. Back in Diamond City, I talked to Piper to get her as a companion, bought some stuff, sold some stuff, and got Nick Valentine's location from Ellie. I ran into a tricky spot with some raiders just outside of Diamond City. I ended up needing to peek out from behind cover, fire blindly to proceed. Then that situation repeated itself inside a building when I got my skull caved in by a tire iron. Stealth and a few grenades took care of that though. While I was in that downtown area, I went ahead and discovered Goodneighbor and the railroad inside the Old North Church. The primary reason being that I wanted the suppressed 10mm pistol Deacon gives you when you're at the switchboard. It would make eliminating the triggermen in the vault much easier. The switchboard itself wasn't all that difficult, except for the spot where you have to hack the terminal to proceed. There were about 5 synths in the area, and it took me several attempts to get past it. With the deliverer in my possession, I sold what I had to get the Tinker Tom Special, a suppressed sniper rifle. I was finally ready to enter Park Street Station. I dismissed Piper to be even sneakier and took out the triggermen with ease. For some reason, I tried a more aggressive approach deeper inside the vault, which resulted in me getting my ass blasted several times, so I resorted to sneaking around like a little gopher. When it came time to deal with Skinny Malone, I convinced his girl to leave him. Skinny gave me 10 seconds to leave. I went just far enough to be hidden, then killed him and his freak friends. Upon returning to Diamond City, I got through the conversation with Nick in his office as quickly as I could so I could go get Kellogg's key from Mayor McDonough. I ignored Dogmeat, dropped off a few things in Sanctuary, and was headed to Fort Hagen. Once I got inside, I took my sweet time clearing out all the synths and turrets, picking up as much loot as I could carry. Then for some reason, I couldn't proceed. I couldn't take the elevator down to the lower level of the building. I had to go back to Diamond City, talk to Dogmeat, then go back to Fort Hagen, sleep in a nearby building, and tell Dogmeat to piss off before going back inside, where, you guessed it, all the synths were back. And even after telling Dogmeat to take a hike, he followed me inside for some reason. By this point, I had put several points into Gunslinger, Sneak, and Ninja, which made my silenced 10mm pistol incredibly effective. The synths did kill me once, but I'll blame that on them catching me off guard. Kellogg was just up ahead. There were several ways to do this. What I wanted to do was stand right in front of him and take out him and his synths in a fantastic display of power. That didn't happen. I could land a few shots on Kellogg, but the synths would kill me. What I ended up doing was loading myself up with Jet and landing half a dozen shots on Kellogg before he could even react. Then I beautifully dodged a punch and a laser rifle shot and killed both synths with headshots. The Brotherhood of Steel arrived. I went back to relay my findings to Nick, convinced Dr. Amari to send me inside Kellogg's brain, did that memory nonsense, and was off to the Glowing Sea. You might think that I'd stealth my way through the Glowing Sea, avoiding all enemy encounters, but that's not what I did. The laser rifle I got from Dance earlier was pretty effective against both rad scorpions and bloatflies. I even took on the Deathclaw that waits just outside of Virgil's cave. And then, of course, got the rundown on what I'd need to do next from Virgil. I also stole his tin cans. And then I was off to Green Tech Genetics to fight against a Courser. Surprisingly, the turrets turned out to be more annoying than the raiders inside. Stealth, once again, proved to be an effective way of traversing a dangerous area, and I was ready to fight the Courser. All it took was a dose of Psycho, a Stealth Boy, and some Jet, and I blew the Courser's head off before he even knew I was there. I also killed the hostages he had taken. This time around, rather than just racing to beat the game as quickly as possible, I wanted to do something different, so I sided with the Brotherhood of Steel. I went back to the police station to take a ride up to the Pridwin. I fired a minigun, listened to Elder Maxon's speech, and was given my next assignment: murder. Well, it's not technically murder, since the super mutants shouldn't exist at all. What you're supposed to do is ride the vertibird to kill them all. That seemed like a really good way of getting shot, so I did the next best thing. I jumped off the Pridwin and hoped I survived the landing. I did. Tinker Tom's Tinker Toy came in handy here. Almost every scum of the Commonwealth in that particular area at the time embraced death after a single shot to the head. The Behemoth was a different story. When you kill the Behemoth in Fallout 3, you're given a fat man to do it. So, naturally, I took out a handgun to kill the Behemoth. It was a shot to the liver that finally took him out of his misery. I was also required to secure the nearby building, which was just more stealth killing. It was time to take the next step. I returned to the railroad to have the Courser chip decoded, then got the signal interceptor plans from Virgil and gave those to Captain Cripple, or whatever her name is. I got the base built, scrapped almost all the junk I had in Sanctuary, and got everything built at the airport. Inside the Institute, I listened to Father ramble on about some boring bullshit, then went to recruit Dr. Madison Lee. While I was down there, I went into the FEV lab to grab Virgil's serum, even though I had no plans of giving it to him. That was a mistake because the legendary Assaultron down there is a giant bitch. Killing it isn't the hard part. The hard part is getting far away enough from the explosion of the goddamn Nagasaki bomb strapped up its ass that was rigged to explode when it dies. Eventually I got lucky enough and survived the blast, and was finally able to leave that underground shithole and go back to the balloon in the sky. The next task involved a lot of going back and forth between the airport and the Pridwin. Up north in some building was a special magnet that the cripple needed to power her vibrator, which seems like a waste since she can't feel anything down there anyway. Then I made some electromagnetic actuators that just kinda sat there on the ground. All that was needed to activate Liberty Prime now was an assortment of nuclear warheads located in a bunker deep in the Glowing Sea. Gee, what fun. I had plenty of Rad-X and Rad-Away, so going out there and securing the nukes was more of a hassle than a challenge. With Liberty Prime finally activated, it was finally time to take the fight to the Institute. Yeah, no, see, spoilies ahead, Dance is a synth, and he got super spooked when he found that out, so he fled like the giant pussy he is. Maybe he should talk to the cripple, her vibrator might be better off in his hands. Once I got to where Dance had ran off to, I figured something out about Fallout 4 that annoyed the absolute shit out of me. In Fallout 3 or New Vegas, when you load a save file, you go from the loading screen to gameplay. There's no transition, just a cut between screens. In Fallout 4, there's a fade in from black every time you load a save. During that fade in, the game doesn't stop. So you can make a save when an enemy is behind a corner, but during that half second or so it takes to get back to the actual gameplay, the enemy is moving. This isn't a big deal during normal gameplay. You can take a little damage, no big deal. But in this run, any damage kills me. It's stupid and I have no idea why they added that fade in. It made dealing with the Protectrons down there much harder than it needed to be. In time, I was able to get past them. After talking to Dance, I realized the best course of action was to execute him. When I told Maxon what happened, I made the final decision to become enemies with the Railroad, who needed to be destroyed. With my sneak skills so high, the battle inside the Old North Church wasn't too rough. A Brotherhood soldier got in my way, resulting in a poorly thrown grenade that killed him. Oh well, casualty of war. Inside the Railroad HQ is where things got real. I had to use all of my grenades to kill Desdemona and crew. In the end, though, the Railroad was no more. But even in their absence, trains would continue to live on through stories and legends. Only one more quest stands between me and the endgame. And, like a fool, I agreed to take the cripple along with me. This was, by far, the hardest part of the game. You ride a vertibird around the top of the mass fusion building. All the while, a bunch of synths are shooting at you. The minigun on the bird is powerful but inaccurate. Remember that saving problem I mentioned a little while ago? Yeah, that comes into play here too. Any mistake results in failure. I even tried pumping myself full of Psycho and Jet. Those helped, but the Psycho allowed me to take damage, which ruled that out as an option. What finally worked was just sheer willpower. I spent about an hour on this segment, well over 50 attempts. Then I landed and had to fight even more synths. I tried to kill all the synths on that elevator ride down into the building. For once, the cripple came in handy as she took all the damage while I sat crouched in the corner. And then came the beryllium agitator and the anti-theft brigade. I had planned for this by placing a few mines outside the doors. The Assaultron activated its hacks and ran right for me. Somehow, I managed to escape death right there. I blew its head off and ran like hell to escape the explosion that didn't even happen. At long last, it was time to activate Liberty Prime. So big, so beautiful, so patriotic. If you've seen my Fallout 3 videos, you probably know what's coming. Following Liberty Prime across the map was boring as hell. I shit you not, it took 15 minutes to get from the airport to the Institute. The fight towards the reactor was fairly standard. Sit back, pick off the synths from afar, rinse and repeat. I decided against getting Father's help, opting for the more fun route, where I put a bullet in his eye socket. I used a stealth boy to take out one of the legendary synths inside the reactor room. He had this awesome triple-barrel missile launcher, which was the perfect tool to exterminate all Institute life in the room. With a charge on the reactor, Cripple teleported us away to the teleporter room. I told Robo-Sean to piss off and die. Cripple sent us to safety. I nuked the Institute and beat Fallout 4 without taking any damage. And that's going to do it for this video about whether or not you can beat Fallout 4 without taking any damage. If you enjoyed the video or learned anything, leave a like. Leave a dislike if you didn't enjoy the video or didn't learn anything. Follow me on Twitter at Mitten Squad. My name is Paul of Mitten Squad. Have a wonderful day.